Hello and welcome back. I'm Nicole, a cottage witch, and this week I discovered Melinda, a web of stories on YouTube, and she's doing March of the Moors in March, which is almost over, but never mind that. It's all about the Brontes all month, which, yes please. So she's got a Brontë Novel Tag for this specific reading Bronte sort of event. You don't have to have read the Bronte novels to do the tag. Although, if you know me, you'll know that I have read them all more than once, except the only ones I haven't reread yet are Shirley and Villette, but that'll happen this year sometime. And Jane Eyre, I don't know how many times I've read that. Several. So anyway, the point is, there's a prompt for each book. Oh, and she's got another video out about biographies of the Brontes, and I've read several of those. And I've got a couple more, because I'm a geek and I love this sort of thing. They're my favorites. So anyway, sorry, tangent. Back to the prompts. There's a prompt for every one of the books. And so for this, because I have way too many books to choose from, what I did was, they're all books by women, and specifically they're all books by women from the Middle East and North Africa, or Central Asia, like that, the greater Middle East region of the world, because I need to get back on my Middle East and North Africa reading one of these days. I'm a touch behind on that. Not too far behind, but a smidge. So anyway, AGNES GREY is the first book, and the prompt for that is a book about women in the workforce. So this is Iran Awakening by Shirin Ebadi. She is Iranian. She lives, I think, in the US now. But she was a judge in Tehran, and then they demoted her, so she was a lawyer, and then they demoted her again because, you know, women couldn't possibly be lawyers. That's ridiculous. That was sarcasm, in case that wasn't obvious. Man, men, I don't know why they end up in charge of things sometimes, because, wow. Anyway, this woman actually went to jail. She won the Nobel Peace Prize. She is incredible. I think, yeah. Does she live in the States now? Did it say? Hang on. Let's see if there's a biography here at the back. She's written several books. Yeah. And it doesn't say. But it is so good. Yeah, she's written several other books. I love all of them. This was in 2006, 2007. So it's, you know, about 20 years old, but unfortunately, things have not dramatically improved for the women in Iran. And yeah, I should reread this at some point because she is something else. So that's AGNES GREY. Jane Eyre is a coming-of-age novel centered on a female character. So for that, I picked, some of these are actually kind of old books now, I'm realizing, but that's okay. This is The Pearl That Broke Its Shell by Nadia Hashimi. She is, I think she's a doctor who lives in, yeah, she's a pediatrician in Washington, or was at the time this was written anyway. But she was, her parents are from Afghanistan. And they had to leave in the 70s during the Soviet conflict. And it just hasn't improved since then for women very much. I mean, it improved in a couple of points and then got dramatically worse. And is now currently appalling. It is so bad. It's really scary how bad it is for women and girls there. So anyway, it's about this girl who, so because her father died and she had no brothers, they had no way of making an income. Because there were rules about women leaving the house and girls leaving, even little girls. Like, the men there are disgusting if they're thinking that way about little girls. The Taliban men in particular, like, that they're so gross. But she lives as a boy, and she works as a boy, and provides for her family. Even though she's a kid, she dresses up as a little boy. And it is such a beautiful and heartbreaking book. It's, I should reread this too. Man, I'm just gonna want to reread books after this one. Oh well. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. It's, Khaled Hosseini blurbed this, so if you like his books, they have a lot in common in terms of style and just how they feel. They're both writers who write beautiful stories that are also heartbreaking and center women a lot and the hardships of women under the Taliban, which are considerable. Okay. Next is The Professor, a book by a favorite author that is not your favorite. So I really like Elif Shafak. She's an author from Turkey. She can't live in Turkey anymore because the Turkish government doesn't like her or her writing, which just makes me like her even more. Go Shafak. She is the most widely read female writer in Turkey, despite the government. So people like her, but the government doesn't. And this book it involves a lot of Rumi's writing, and his life story somehow. And maybe it's because I didn't know a lot about Rumi before this that I didn't really get into it so much. Maybe I should reread it now. I don't know. But like I didn't dislike it, but I liked other books of hers, like The Bastard of Istanbul, and what was the other one that I like? There are a few that I like. She's written quite a few, and I've gotten a bit behind. I read The Water. What's her latest one? Something about a river over her head or something. Anyway, it was good. I like it. This must have been one of her earlier books. It doesn't list her other books because she's written quite a few. Anyway, she sets them all in and around the Middle East. Like sometimes they're in Turkey, sometimes they're only partially in Turkey, and then because a lot of people from Turkey have had to travel elsewhere. Like she lives, I think, in the UK now. And then a lot of other people from Syria and elsewhere, Iraq, have had to go to Turkey to escape other sorts of violence. So it's a bit complicated. And this one I don't think is about that. Set in Massachusetts. I never know how to say that state name properly. Anyway, it's a good book. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad book. It's just not my favorite of the books I've read of hers. Shirley, a book about female friendship. So this is about female friendship and then maybe hints of lesbianism. Women of Sand and Myrrh by Hanan al-Sheikh. She's also been banned in a lot of Middle Eastern countries, so you know. I'm gonna be into that. Her first, the story of her was also banned because she talks a lot about female sexuality and sensuality, as it says here. Female friendships. It very much centers women's stories and their emotional lives and the constraints of their physical lives. This one is set in an unnamed Middle Eastern country, I think, but it's pretty clearly Saudi Arabia, I think. And so the women are, like, they've married into wealthy families, so they have a lot of money, they have a lot of luxurious things, but they can't leave their homes. They're trapped. They don't have choices. They can be educated, but they can't work. So they can't do anything with their lives. So it's really about that. And it's a beautiful book. It is one of these books that is so what I will say is Shafak and Hashimi, and even Ebadi. Hashimi writes with a very American sort of style. I mean, I think she is American. I think she was born in the States. So this is maybe more accessible to Westerners who haven't read a lot of Middle Eastern novels. Hanan al-Sheikh and some other authors, they're not writing for a Western audience. So if you go into this expecting something like Hashimi, you're going to be a little bit lost. They do something else altogether with novels, and it is magnificent, but it's very different, and it's a bit disorienting if you don't really know what to expect going in. So it's not really, I don't know, like there's a lot of cultural information that if you don't know much about the Middle East, you're just going to be missing some things, which is okay. Like I read this before I knew a lot about the Middle East, and I did miss a lot. Should reread this one too. That seems to be the underlying theme of this. Once I'm done rereading the Brontes, maybe I'll reread these. Because I think, like I've read some of her work since then, and I've definitely understood it more and appreciated it more for what it was, because it's sort of like reading Toni Morrison, right? Like, she didn't write for white Americans. She was very clear about that. She wrote for Black Americans. And so this is sort of the same. She's writing for Middle Eastern women. So if you're a white Westerner, there might be times of cultural confusion. just so you know, because sometimes I see reviews about people who hate a book, didn't connect with a book, didn't understand the book, and think that's somehow a fault of the book rather than just an aspect of being from a completely different cultural background and context. So anyway, that's the caveat for this, but it is, ooh, it's punchy. Okay. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, a book about someone in a toxic relationship or recovering from a toxic relationship. So this is Daughters of Smoke and Fire by Abraham. She is, I think she's Kurdish. Is she Kurdish? Yeah, she was born and raised in the Kurdistan province in Iran and is now in Toronto and San Francisco. And for a debut novel, this is a really, really good one. So here's the thing. The reason I picked this is because I have a hard time imagining a scenario in a place like Iran with the current government that they've got and how oppressive it is towards women and how oppressive it is towards the Kurds, where a woman could be in a non-toxic relationship because the men are so privileged above women that I just don't know how that could possibly not affect a relationship in some way. So it does seem like it would be hard, really, really hard to have any kind of healthy relationship with anybody in that context, because everything is so restricted and women have so few rights, and are so highly oppressed. And especially if you're a Kurdish woman in Iran, then you're like extra less than human. And there are some relationship difficulties in this. Like, there are people who betray other people, and so you're dealing with that sort of toxicity in relationships as well. So it's really difficult to navigate, I think, any sort of relationships in this context. So that is Daughters of Smoke and Fire, and yeah, highly recommend that one. Villette, a book about a character in a new land. Okay, so for this I picked The Boy on the Beach by Tima Curdy. So they escaped Syria and came to Canada. And let me see if I can, there she said, there's always hope, which is amazing because if you remember, I don't know if she included the photo in here, but there was a very famous photo of a little boy on a beach. I don't know if it was in Germany or where, but that was her nephew, this boy. So trigger warning, I guess, because this is horrifying. But this is a little boy, Alan Kurdi, who was only 2 years old and drowned when they were trying to migrate from Syria to Europe. And his photo went viral in Canada because the rest of his family is in Canada, and it's just so heartbreaking. So this is her story. This is Tima Curdy here. And it's making me tear up a little bit because, like, kids shouldn't deal with this stuff. It's like watching the kids in Gaza right now. Like, they're just going through things that kids should never have to experience, ever, under any circumstances. Like, look at these guys. There was Alan when he was alive. A little cutie. So yeah, this is, they were trying to leave Turkey, and I think they were trying to get to Germany. Anyway, a lot of migrants drown on the voyage because it is treacherous, and they do not have the best equipped boats, and the traffickers don't always have don't almost ever have their best interests at heart. So, yeah, this was a hard one to read. It's heartbreaking, but it's so important, especially now more than ever, when migrants and refugees are being so villainized by politicians. Like, they're not considered human, except they're very much human, and this book is a good reminder as that, as any. Then Wuthering Heights, a book where a house or other building plays a major role. So every time I talk about the Middle East, it seems I talk about reading Melinda in Tehran by Azar Nafisi. So she was an English professor. I mean, she still is, I think, in the US somewhere. Or maybe she's retired by now. I have no idea. Because this was written a while back, too. She was, 2003. She is incredible. So she taught Western classics at the University of Tehran and also at a different university. So the reason I picked this is because, yes, those two universities played a central role, but even more than that, when the veil was mandated and she refused to wear it and lost her job, her house, her living room in her house became a classroom for these young women who couldn't learn English literature any other way. Like, their options had become so restricted and their lives had become so curtailed that this living room in her house was the place where they could explore imaginative worlds outside of their incredibly stifling environment. So yeah, I love this book. I reread it, I think, last year, and sometimes you read a book so long after you read it the first time and you're a little worried because you're not sure if you're gonna love it as much as you did the first time, and I loved it as much as I did the first time. It is incredible. I don't know if she has any pictures in here because some of the girls are still there, but yeah, that's her. She is a professor at Johns Hopkins University, and yeah, she's very well educated. And you know, it's funny, not all the books she talks about are books I like. I don't like Henry James all that much. I do like Lolita. Who was the other one she talked about? Oh, I don't like The Great Gatsby. It's just not ever going to be a book for me. But I love the way she talks about them. She finds so much joy and so much humanity in literature, and it's so beautiful. And to know that that was something that she eventually had to leave her country for because she could no longer do that there is a bit heartbreaking as well. So on that cheerful note, you should do the Brontë Novel Tag because it's fun, and read some Bronte novels because they're also amazing. And I'll link Melinda at A Web of Stories down below if you want to go check out her other March on the Moors stuff. So anyway, that's that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.